Welcome, everybody, back to the Sentinel Report. I am your host, Alex Newman. Thanks so much for being with us. Now, you probably heard there's a big fight going on Capitol Hill. Are we going to shut down the government or a small part of the government, the non-essential parts of the government? Why do we even have non-essential parts of the government? I don't know. But yeah, it's going on right now as we speak. Democrats want Republicans to do their bidding and fund all of the Democrat programs, open borders, mass migration, you name it. Democrats want it, and they're threatening to block this and shut down the government. Well, joining us now to discuss all of this and much more is Congressman Keith Self. He was born in a military hospital during his father's service in the U.S. Army. He went to the U.S. Military Academy at West Point, where he started his 25-year career of service to our country. He has served all over the place. He was deployed to Grenada, to Bosnia, to Afghanistan, to Iraq. And he received multiple awards and honors and retired with the rank of lieutenant colonel. After retiring from the Army, he became county judge in Collin County in Texas and served several terms before retiring in 2018. And he now represents the great state of Texas and his district in the U.S. House of Representatives. They live in McKinney, Texas, and he serves on a whole bunch of committees, very active in various caucuses, including the Republican Study Committee, the Counterterrorism Caucus, the Border Security Caucus, the DOJ Caucus, and so much more. Congressman Self, welcome to the program. Thank you very much for joining us today.
You're great. You bet, Alex. Great to be here.
Thank you so much. So I want to start with the shutdown. I mean, everybody's talking about it. Are we headed for a shutdown? And do you think Republicans will give in to some of these Democrat demands to be able to keep the whole government up and running?
Yeah, I think we're going to have a shutdown because the Democrats continue to insist that we fund illegal immigrant health care, and they want to return the $1.5 trillion in spending that has been cut by this Congress. We've done our job. We've passed the clean CR. Now it's time for the Democrats in the Senate to do theirs.
So there's been talk about the 60 vote threshold. In fact, I've spoken with several people on the Hill who suggest it's probably time to go ahead and get rid of that. I know that's a controversial idea, and I know that's in the upper chamber, but the argument that I heard is just that the Democrats are using this to basically force Republicans to pass Democrat spending priorities and really create a Democrat spending bill. What are your thoughts on this 60 vote threshold? Should it be removed by Republicans, or will we just wait till Democrats do it?
Well, it's actually called a filibuster. I'm not sure why it's still called a filibuster, because filibuster means something else. But no, I don't think we ought to remove it because the Republicans tend to stick to the Constitution, to the rule of law. But if we removed it and made it a simple majority, the Democrats would run all over the Constitution as they are wont to do, as they often do. So no, I don't think we ought to remove the 60 vote limit.
So what's the way forward here? You just try to get some of the Democrats to compromise on this issue? Do you think that's feasible?
Well, I think they're going to have to because I think the president and the Senate are going to stand strong for what we have already passed. I think they've got a vote scheduled on Monday, later tonight, maybe, but it will be on the clean CR that the House has already passed. So I think the way forward is we need to find a negotiated settlement with the Democrats that does not include their outrageous, egregious demands.
Very good. Shifting gears a little bit, the Trump administration has done a lot through executive policy, through executive orders, and through regulatory changes. And I know you've got some bills in the House to try to codify at least some of that. I want to start with H.R. 4730, which would codify Executive Order 14253, that would, in the words of the bill, restore truth and sanity to American history. We know that there have been very deliberate efforts to distort American history, to try to demonize the United States, to try to make America seem like an irredeemable, horrible, racist, systemically racist place. Talk to us about your bill. Talk to us about this executive order and why you think it's important to move ahead on this.
Well, because history is one of the things that the left wants to tear down to fundamentally change America. You may remember that phrase. History, family, and faith are the three things that they're going to have to tear down if they're going to make the federal government autonomous and supreme over everything. So this bill would simply say you need to treat history as history is. Frankly, in Texas, we had an effort not many years ago to reimagine, reinterpret the Alamo. Can you imagine changing the Alamo story in Texas? It is absolutely fundamental to Texas. And that's happening all across America. Park Service has been instructed to do this under the Biden administration. This is absolutely crucial to remembering who we are, where we came from, and those values that America is built on.
So when did this process start with the trying to distort our history, and how bad is it now? I mean, you do see these men on the street interviews where children don't know anything about our Constitution, they don't know anything about our history, they don't know anything at all. How long has this been going on, and how bad is the problem?
Well, I think you've got to go back to when we took civics out of high schools. We haven't taught civics for years and years and years. So I would say that was probably part of the beginning. Then you go back to the Supreme Court decisions in the early 60s that took prayer out of schools and things like that. That is where the change started. And I will go back to the early 60s. Not many people remember the late 60s, but we were in a very similar time in the late 60s where I thought we might lose our culture. So we can redeem this. We can pull this back from the brink.
Yeah, I certainly hope we can, because it's a lot on the line, as you know, Congressman. You've got another bill. It's kind of an obscure agency. We haven't heard as much about it in recent years, but the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. This is HR 814 to defund this organization. Why do you think it's important to defund this? What are some of the problems with this bureau?
Well, frankly, this is an unconstitutional bureau. It does not fall under the congressional funding, which is by the Constitution, the Article 1, we control the funding. And frankly, this organization is allowed to take unlimited funds directly from the Federal Reserve. Now, the Federal Reserve is owned by the banks, of course, and so they are allowed to take their funding from the Federal Reserve with no congressional oversight. That is not constitutional. This entire organization, therefore, is unconstitutional. This bill would simply limit the amount of funds that they can take from the reserves. But frankly, there is a Supreme Court case, and I'm hoping that the Supreme Court will eventually rule this organization, at least bring it underneath congressional funding constraints and authority, if not declaring it unconstitutional.
Wow. Excellent. And that brings up a bigger issue with the Federal Reserve. We had another congressman on just recently who had multiple bills, Congressman Warren Davidson, to rein in the Federal Reserve. He expressed serious concerns about the lack of accountability, the lack of significant audits to know what's all going on there. Are you concerned about the Federal Reserve? I know Trump's been in a very public battle with the head of the Federal Reserve. What are your thoughts on this organization as an institution, and how might Congress step in to improve it or abolish it?
Well, it's got two mandates when it started with one. Full employment and the protection of the dollar are its two basic mandates today. I believe it needs to defend the dollar. It needs to defend our currency because as the world's reserve currency, that's vitally important to the United States. Frankly, I think that the real problem is you see central banks around the world buying gold. They are hoarding gold because why? They don't think the full faith and trust of the United States government is worth much anymore. So they're stockpiling gold. So we are in effect going back worldwide, perhaps, to a gold standard rather than fiat-backed currency, which is what we have today. And the Federal Reserve is the one that tries to protect and should protect the value of the US dollar. And yet we're losing value every day. I think that's why central banks are buying gold.
Are you concerned, on that note, are you concerned about efforts by, for example, Communist China, the Russians, maybe the BRICS alliance, to build a rival financial state? As you mentioned, they are all, the central banks, they're stockpiling large quantities of gold, and they seem to be trying to build an alternate mechanism for settling payments across international borders. In fact, in some places, they're well underway. Are you concerned about that? Is that a deliberate attack on America or just a natural response?
It is. No, it's a deliberate attack on the US dollar. So they are trying to ruin the US dollar as the worldwide reserve currency. That is their intent. But who is going to assume that if you invest in Chinese money or Russian money, that you're ever going to get your money back. With the U.S. Treasuries, the U.S. Treasury bond is the foundation of international finance today. People buy our Treasury bonds, less so today, but traditionally they buy our bonds because they know they're going to get their money back. We have the rule of law backing up the US dollar, the full faith and credit of the United States government. So if that ever fails, where are they going to go? Are they going to go to China? Do you trust the Chinese Communist Party to give you your money back? Do you trust Putin to give you your money back? Probably not. That's why they're investing in gold. That's why we need to defend the US dollar as the reserve currency of the world.
Excellent. Shifting gears a little bit, you have another bill, and this is an issue that I know a lot of people in Texas are passionate about. A lot of Americans are passionate about. It's the H.R. 895, Ensuring Justice for Victims of Partial Birth Abortion Act. The fake media did not talk much about this horrific case, but just a few years ago, the bodies of some unborn children, victims of partial birth abortion, apparently were discovered. And your bill seeks to address that. Talk to us about it. Why is that important?
Well, because the partial birth abortion ban is not being enforced.
Hmm.
That's the sad fact of life. In fact, the case that you talked about, the DC-5, these three unborn babies, one of which showed distinct signs of partial birth being torn apart, was found in a cardboard box on the street. And what happened? The FBI arrested the woman who found the box. No accountability for who had done these horrific acts, but they arrested the woman that found the box and tried to make an issue out of this. That is completely turned upside down. That is immoral. We need to protect our unborn, and if they are torn apart in a partial birth abortion, that is a horrific act that we need to enforce the laws of the United States and hold people accountable for doing those horrific acts.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. It's such a sad story. What else could Congress be doing on this issue? I know the Supreme Court kind of kicked the issue back to the states pretty recently with their major
Right.
decision overturning Roe versus Wade. But where should America go on this issue?
Well, all the Supreme Court did was return it to the states, so they have driven abortion underground.
Hmm.
Now we can't even account abortions because abortion pills are sold through the mail over state lines. We have no idea how many young women are mistreating themselves, abusing themselves through the improper use of these pills, sometimes even dying. So all the Supreme Court did was return it to the states and drive it underground. So I think the federal government has got a part to play in this, and we need to make sure that we play that part going forward.
Yeah, yeah. Of course, our founders said one of the reasons for government was to protect the rights of people, and they said the right to life was chief among them. So you'd
Right.
think that'd be pretty clear. I want to turn to another issue that a lot of people are thinking about at the moment, and that is the Donald Trump administration. They have done a lot through executive action, as we started with, on climate, on energy, on regulatory issues across the board. But some of those things were enshrined into law with the One Big Beautiful Bill, but a lot have not been. And we saw after the first administration, Joe Biden came in and literally day one just overturned huge amounts of the actions that President Trump took. What is Congress doing, or is Congress doing anything to codify some of these very significant changes that the president has tried to bring in? And how could the American people who want these policy changes get active in trying to get those enshrined into federal law?
Well, frankly, the House has voted on some 50 of these executive orders, but we're back to the Senate. Will they get through the Senate? That's the question. We've actually used the Congressional Review Act, the CRA, against some of the actions of the Biden administration. So we are working to do it. But again, the Senate is the speed bump here, is the obstacle to getting these through. But we are trying to codify as many as possible because you're exactly right. If it stands as an executive order, it can be overturned with a stroke of a pen. God forbid if we have another progressive president like Biden in the future.
Yeah. So do you think some of that will get into this funding bill? I mean, we got the midterms coming up in 2026. Are you optimistic that some of those things actually will be codified into federal law?
No, we really need a Reconciliation 2 package in order to get a lot of those into law because this is a clean bill So this is not a policy bill. This is a funding bill, primarily sticking to funding. So I believe that we would need a second reconciliation bill in order to get those into policy.
And are you optimistic that that's possible?
Uh, I am not. Discussions are being had. We will see what happens.
Wow, that's unfortunate. One of the issues that Trump has made a centerpiece of his administration is the so-called climate change. He called it the greatest con job in the history of humanity on the floor of the UN General Assembly the other day. I know Texas produces a lot of energy. I know Texas consumes a lot of energy. What are your thoughts on this UN climate agenda, if you will, to rein in carbon dioxide emissions and change over to green energy and so many other policies tied to this?
Well, it's a direct attack on the West, on our values, because China and India are the greatest polluters on the face of the earth. They are not touched by this. This is an attack on the West, the developed countries. We have done more to lower pollutants in the air than anyone around the world over the past 30 years, and China and India continue to pollute. So until you get everybody on board and everybody plays under the same rules, nothing is going to be done. Climate changes all the time. We know that it goes up and down naturally. The issue is that people think that we're causing all of it. Mankind cannot be causing all of it because you have, look at the spate of volcanoes that have erupted, the earthquakes that we've had. Climate is changing. The question is, how much belongs to mankind? Frankly, I think the Arctic ice will tell you today, not much.
Amen. Now, you are on the Committee on Foreign Affairs, a very important committee in Congress, and it seems to me, in fact, I just did a big article on this, that Trump is recalibrating our relationship with a lot of the international partners of the United States government, at least from the past. So we're, of course, in the process of withdrawing from UNESCO, the UN's education agency. We're in the process of leaving the World Health Organization. As a member of the Committee on Foreign Affairs, what do you think about these institutions? Is Trump doing the right thing by withdrawing and reining in some of these international organizations?
Well, you've got to separate the organizations. NATO is still very important, and they're picking up their funding so that we can have a very strong NATO, a counterbalance to both Russia and China. The UN organizations, frankly, we've been funding a majority of their funds for years and years and years, and they've been anti-America, anti-Israel, anti-West for so long. So yes, absolutely, he is right to recalibrate our relationships with these organizations. We want to participate in organizations, but two things. We want people to fund their fair share, and two, we want them to be truly unbiased in their approach to the world. Because look, free markets, freedom has done more for people around the world than anything else. And yet there are still people around the world that want to use our liberties, our freedoms against us, and that has got to stop. So I absolutely agree with President Trump as he recalibrates these relationships.
Excellent. And on this issue of the border, in his speech at the General Assembly, Trump said that the UN had been funding, he called it a globalist assault on the borders of Western countries. I know you are part of the Border Security Caucus. This is a big issue for you. How concerned are you about the UN's role in the mass migration that Joe Biden facilitated a few years ago? And what does the United States do about it?
Well, President Trump has closed our border on the south. We didn't need new law. We didn't need new regulation. We simply needed a new president on the south. But today, we are also concerned about the migration that is being weaponized against Western Europe by Russia, bringing people out of Africa, out of global south, and putting them into across the border from Russia into Europe, and doing the same thing that was happening on our southern border. So today, immigration, illegal immigration, is being used as a weapon around the world, particularly in Europe today. So President Trump fixed our border. I think it's off the table as an issue. Now we've got to work on it in other areas. I chair the Europe subcommittee. I'm very concerned about what Russia is doing to Western Europe now with illegal immigration.
Fantastic. We're almost out of time, Congressman, but I do want to ask, you have an A ranking on the Freedom Index of the New American Magazine. I serve as senior editor there. Those rankings come from voting records as based on the U.S. Constitution. Constitutional voting record is an A, unconstitutional voting record is F, and you've done very well on that. Talk to us about your view on the U.S. Constitution, your view as a congressman. How does that all fit together?
Well, as we approach our 250th anniversary as a nation, I go back to the founders. What a wise group of men, and frankly, some of the wives, spouses that are not talked about. Abigail Adams, for instance, who put this together, the Declaration of Independence, which is a spiritual document, the Constitution, which is our legal document. They put together a framework that is unrivaled around the world in terms of individual freedom, in terms of prosperity, in terms of peace. So I think we need to go back to that. We need to protect those values that we find in those two documents. And that's what I try to do every day here in Congress.
Well, we are grateful for that. Congressman Keith Self, it's been a real pleasure. Any final thoughts you want to share with the folks before we let you go?
I'm looking forward to the next few days of getting this government funded at a level that will make sense, that will increase the freedom of the Americans in this country. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate you joining us. Appreciate your service to our country in the military, and I hope we can talk to you soon.
You bet. Bye.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Stay with us. We're going to be right back after this quick break with a segment with our good friend, John Richardson. Folks, turbo cancers are exploding. You know it. I know it. We all know it. The government knows it. And a lot of people are feeling hopeless about it. Of course, we have a strong suspicion that these are tied to the infamous injections that we're not supposed to speak of. But our guest on the other side of this quick break has more for us. Stay tuned.
In 1776, a nation was born, forged in the crucible of revolution. Brave men and women stood together fighting for freedom, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Throughout history, the spirit of patriotism has prevailed. The battles may have changed, but the values remain the same. Today, in 2024, we find ourselves at a pivotal moment where the call for unity, freedom, and a better future echoes louder than ever. Introducing Patriot Mobile, the wireless carrier that stands with you. We are committed to supporting the values that make our nation great. With affordable plans and reliable nationwide coverage, Patriot Mobile is not just a wireless service. It's a call to action for those who believe in the American dream. Because this year is not just any year, it's the most important year since our nation's founding. Choose a wireless carrier that shares your values. Choose Patriot Mobile. For free activation, use promo code Newman.